Riven mods are many layers of RNG. You gotta get one. You gotta get the right one. You gotta get the stats on the right one. With so many bits of random put together, how rare is your Riven, or the Riven you want? That's what I'm here to answer today. I'm the Engineer. Let's solve a practical problem. I'm going to break this up into a few sections. The chance of getting a Veiled Riven in the first place, the chance of it being your specific weapon, and the chance that you'll roll the Riven into the stats you want. I'll put a handy comparison chart at the end of all this too. The chances of getting different categories of Riven from a sortie are known, as I'm showing you now. This adds up to 27.9%, meaning Mr. Average gets a Riven just slightly more often than every 4 sorties. If you don't, you're not average. You're unique, in that you get a pineapple every single sortie, just like the rest of us. But Mr. Average, he'll get his Rivens. Normalising these results, we see how often a Veiled Riven will be of each type of getting one from a sortie. As for Riven slivers, there's no indication I could find to be certain of the chances of Riven types from Riven slivers, so I'll work on the assumption that Rivens from slivers also follow the same percentages as they do with sorties. You don't get Archgun or Companion Rivens from sorties or slivers, so we can skip over those for a moment. With sorties clocking in at 27.9%, Mr. Average will get around 101 Rivens a year from them, and a further 52 Rivens a year from slivers if he never misses a chance. Of these 153 Rivens, about 45 will be melee, 42 for secondaries, 37 for rifles, 11 for kit guns, 11 for saws, and 7 for shotguns. So that's the chance you get a Veiled Riven, and for each category. So what's the chance of the thing you want actually being inside it? When it comes to Unveiling, nothing actually indicates any weapon is favourably over another within any category. The sample data required to verify this would be beyond enormous, and as such this is only an assumption. I'm making this assumption based on DE's common strategy of letting RNG handle pretty much everything. If you do find evidence or confirmation that Rivens do have a bias, let me know. With this in mind, we can simply take stock of how many eligible weapons there are in each category, ignoring duplicates of Prime, Vandal or Mark 1 versions of course. I'll also include Companion and Archwing Rivens for completion's sake. So we've got how many weapons are presently in each category, what percent of the category each weapon represents, and therefore the chance that any random Riven drop from sortie or slivers will give you the specific weapon's Riven. For example, if you want a Fullman Riven, which given the disposition at this stage you probably shouldn't, there's a roughly 1 in 304 chance of the Riven from a sliver being a Fullman one. So say if you did a sortie with a friend, the chance that on that day your squad got a Riven drop, and then you both unveiled the Riven to find you both got a Fullman Riven, comes out to around about 1 in 331,240. While Mr. Average might have to wait the better part of 1,000 years for that to happen for a specific weapon, this is precisely what happened to me and a close friend just a few months into playing this game, so fate can be rather fickle. Again, these are just the chances, not a decree that you must wait that long, nor is it guaranteed after that long. But on average, it takes 83 Rivens to get one for a specific kit gun, and 431 Rivens to get a specific melee. In this time, DE will have released new melees just to mess with you. Okay, so now you know how rare the specific Riven for the weapon you want is. Let's talk about getting the stats you want for it. There's no documentation I could find on how common a certain stat array is, so instead I compiled 350 Riven rolls, all verified as completely random with no cherry picks, and looked into those. Rivens with only 2 positives came up 26% of the time, 2 positives and 1 negative 22% of the time, those with 3 positives 28% of the time, and 3 positives with 1 negative came up 25% of the time. All those are rounded to the nearest percent. So 2 positives, 1 negative is marginally more rare in the sample taken, but I can reasonably assume that the actual chance for each stat is around about 25%. The sample is within expected variance, given I only sampled a few hundred. Now let's talk specific stats. Out of these random Rivens, I recorded the exact stats on 150 of them. Approximately 2/3 of those were ranged ones and 1/3 were melee. For both categories, they produced bell curve counts of each stat being selected. What this means is that no one stat is singled out over another, as there seemed to be no pattern to either highs or lows. The reason this produces a bell curve is because it's a sample of them. If I had, say, 1 million rivens, I'd probably be looking at one giant line on the average expected result. So it's a bit of an assumption, but with data behind it, we can reasonably say that there's no bias to which stat is picked at any one point. There are 24 possible gun stats. Of those, 5 of them can only be positive, that's the 4 basic elementals and punch through, and the rest can be positive or negative. Stats which do not affect the gun can appear, such as -slash on a pure elemental weapon. So roughly speaking, this means for any positive stat, each stat has a 4.2% chance of appearing, and for the negatives it's a 5.3% chance. That's 1 in 24 and 1 in 19. So with 24 positive stats, on a 2 positive riven, there's a 1 in 12 chance a specific stat gets picked, as given by the chance of not being picked for the first stat is 23 in 24, and not being picked for the second is 22 in 23. So if we combine these, we get the chance that it's not picked at all, which is 22 in 24, that comes down to 11 in 12, which means the chance it is picked is the opposite, that's 1 in 12. By the same math, there's a 1 in 8 chance a specific stat is picked on a 3 positive riven. On any given riven, there is a 1 in 19 chance a specific stat is the negative if a negative is rolled. As negatives happen about half the time, this is actually 1 in 38, which is around 2.6%. Now if there are 2 unique stats you want both of, it's a 0.36% chance, or 1 in 276, on a 2 positive riven. And for a 3 positive riven, this rises to 1.09%, or 1 in 92, because there's 3 different ways you can go about getting the same result. This means for a given roll, it's 1 in 138. If there are 3 unique stats you want all positives for, that is only possible on a 3 positive riven of course. And this comes out to 1 in 4048, which is including rolls which only have 2 positives, therefore giving no chance. Realistically though, you won't be looking for just 2 or 3 specific stats. For most guns, there are 4 great stats: damage, multi-shot, crit damage, and crit chance. In addition to that, there are 6 good stats which are nice, but not normally as nice as those first 4. Those good stats are status chance, fire rate, and then the 4 basic elemental damages of cold, heat, electric, and toxin. This is a gross oversimplification. For example, many guns aren't crit guns, or others have massive slash damage, so benefit from plus slash. But this video isn't about to be 10 hours long just to accommodate the 12 people who main the Flux rifle, so we'll go with the simplification. Overall, for most guns there's going to be around about 4 great stats, and around about 6 good stats. And similarly, for most guns there are 6 acceptable negatives. That's ammo max, damage versus infested, projectile speed, reload speed, plus recoil, and zoom. I'm singling out damage versus infested because they're weak compared to the Grineer and Corpus. So if a Riven ends up with minus damage infested, but otherwise still has good stats, I don't expect anyone to be upset. You can get by with minus impact, puncture, or slash depending on the weapon, but I'm keeping this somewhat strict, otherwise the end result won't actually be the end result. If you're happy to accept more negatives, then you'll get a satisfying Riven more often than this final stats is going to show. For melee Rivens, there are 23 possible stats rather than 24, including 4 positive only stats, which are the basic elementals. This gives very nearly identical results to guns, so to keep this video a sensible length, I'm going to skip rehashing the math just for those. The minutiae are different, but the scales remain the same. If it bothers you too much, just beg DE to add a positive only stat of plus lifesteal or something. And just a quick mention, rolling a Riven doesn't increase the chance of better stats. The distribution of stat counts and values did not improve for rolled Rivens I checked versus the unrolled ones. This suggests no bias or change to Riven results from rolls compared to brand new Rivens. Basically, the 10th roll and the 100th roll of a Riven have equal chance of being good or terrible compared to one another. DE does not believe in the pity system, as we all know. So let's sum this all up neatly. In terms of their value, generally, Rivens can be sorted as such. At the bottom, we've got 2 OK stats and a neutral stat. What I mean by neutral is that's a positive you don't want, but at least it's not a negative. Next up from that is 2 OK stats, a neutral, and a fair negative. Up again, we've got 2 OK stats on their own. And when I say OK stats, I'm considering pairs like multi-shot and cold to be 2 OK stats, because a great stat and an OK one makes for only an OK riven. Above that is 3 OK stats on their own, 2 OK stats with an acceptable negative, and 3 OK stats with an OK negative. Above that then we get into the greater stats. We've got 2 great stats and 1 neutral, 2 great stats, 1 neutral, and a negative we can accept, 2 great stats on their own, 2 great stats with a fair negative, 3 great stats on their own, and the last one, 3 great stats with an acceptable negative, the ultimate in riven results. For everything else not included here, say for example just 1 great stat or an unacceptable negative, I'm not considering those ones. They're not worth keeping except for the memes. Really, no one should be looking at a plus damage to Grineer, plus crit damage minus zoom riven and going, yep, this'll do. So in these categories then, let's have a look at the chances of getting a roll at each step or better. I'm saying or better because something okay-ish may be uncommon, but that doesn't make it valuable. So let's look at the chances of you rolling at least as good as each riven combination, as well as the chance for just that category. I've also added in a column for how many rolls of a riven it would take Mr. Average to get that result. This table will also be in the video description, saving you trying to grab a screenshot if you just want the image later. Now you probably have some idea how much Kuva is in your inventory at the moment, but if you decided to go get more, I've asked a few farm heavy clanmates how much Kuva they can make. Their consensus was with boosters and Smeeta rocking, you're looking around about 40 to 60,000 Kuva per hour at best. Let's call it 50k. 50k Kuva is 14 rolls and 2/7 of the way to the next roll on a heavily rolled riven. If it's a brand new riven, you'll be at just 1,000 or so Kuva short of 19 rolls. That means with an hour's Kuva grinding, you can expect a new riven to roll through these stages and give you something with 3 OK stats or better. With 2 hours of grinding, you're looking at 3 OK stats and a fair negative, maybe even 2 great stats and 1 letdown stat. But that next step up the chart for expectations means you need 5 hours of grinding, on average, to add on that fair negative. It's 9 hours worth of Kuva just to get 2 great stats on their own, typically speaking. 1 in 125 rivens will open up with 2 great stats already there, don't forget, but that's RNG for you. You're looking at 27 hours of Kuva farming to push up expected returns to 2 great stats with a fair negative or better. And it'll be over 100 hours of Kuva grinding to expect 3 great stats on a riven. And for that so-called god tier riven, 3 great stats like crit chance, crit damage and multi-shot, plus a fair negative like zoom, you're looking at an eye-watering 390-ish hours of Kuva farming. And that's with boosters, Kavat and a squad mad enough to grind it out with you. We're talking just shy of 20 million Kuva to get to this point on average. And then, only then, can you consider yourself unlucky for having not rolled a truly top tier god roll. But then, if you've put in 390 hours into grinding out nearly 20 million Kuva, I'd hope you've been selling off the good enough rivens along the way, and you can probably just buy your god roll now. Seriously, you'd need to pay me to grind out one survival mission for that many hours of my life. Oh, by the way, I stream on Twitch, Warframe every Sunday and Wednesday. I hope that having watched this video, you now appreciate how lucky you are. Or, if you're like some people I've met and have dumped 500,000 Kuva to get sweet naff all, I hope you realise just how unlucky you are. To those of you in the wrong 1%, my condolences. Maybe don't go buy a lottery ticket. If you'd like to see more breakdowns of the mechanics of this game, give the video a like, and if you're new here, or just been here a few times, consider subscribing too. For now though, get Kuva, roll rivens, and fight well, Tenno.